Good afternoon, and welcome to Common Threads, Colorado's intelligence community. Before we begin, I would like to share a video from Guidehouse, our host sponsor for today's program.
This is Guidehouse. We work side by side with our commercial and public sector clients to address their most important challenges by advancing strategic thinking and building trust in society. Our national security segment transforms our nation's greatest emergency management, homeland security, diplomatic, law enforcement, and intelligence community challenges into opportunities. We work side by side with federal agencies to optimize mission operations by defining a vision for the future, a strategy to achieve it, and a plan to measure impact. The future of consulting lives here.
And now please welcome INSA President Suzanne Wilson Heckenberg.
Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from. Thank you for joining us today for Common Threads, Colorado's intelligence community program. We have an outstanding lineup of speakers today. We are especially pleased to welcome David Gautier, Director of NGA's Commercial and Business Operations Group. David, thank you for making time to be here with us. This is our third installment of INSA's programming aimed at the Rocky Mountain region. We started these events back in 2018 to help foster relationships between the public, private, and academic sectors of the IC in Colorado and beyond. And while I regret that we are not there today to be in person for this event, I'm especially pleased with the reach of this event. Registered attendees crisscross the US from regions across Colorado, Seattle, St. Louis, San Antonio, and back here to the DC region, where I am tuning in from Alexandria, Virginia. This diverse representation reflects the many national security hubs across our nation. Our community continues to grow and offer exciting new ways to contribute to the US national security mission. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have questions, please include your name and organization when submitting them through the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. We have well over 450 registered virtual attendees today, so please be patient as we will do our best to keep to your questions. This is a reminder that this program is off the record and will be available on our website following the event. And finally, I would like to thank our many sponsors, Boeing, GDIT, Guidehouse, Illuminate Mission Solutions, Leidos, Mantech, Maxar, Raytheon Intelligence and Space, and SAIC for their critical support of this program. We could not deliver this kind of insight without the support of our sponsors and partners. Now, I am pleased to introduce a longtime friend of INSA's, Cameron Ward-Hunt, Director at Guidehouse and Chair of INSA's Intelligence Champions Council, who will introduce our keynote speaker today. Cameron, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. On behalf of Guidehouse, I want to thank INSA for hosting today's discussion. We're particularly excited to be a host sponsor this afternoon, welcoming old friends, Dave, that's you, and new ones to the discussion about how we create common threads in Colorado's intelligence community. Guidehouse works to help solve our clients' most challenging problems, and often those involve overcoming organizational boundaries, multiple time zones, and different operating languages to create real transformation. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce today's keynote. I met Dave almost 20 years ago when I first joined Colorado's intelligence community. We shared a cubicle in a very poorly lit room. Even though I'm told that a roast and a keynote have many similar characteristics, I'm told I'm supposed to do the latter. Hopefully Dave will fill in the gaps just a little bit with a colorful tale or two. So Dave, that's going to be on you. When Dave and I first met, he was in a unique role that combined strategy, technology, and operations. Over the past 20 plus years, he's excelled at all three parts of that Venn diagram with leadership roles in the Air Force, industry, and government. After he left us in Colorado, he went on to great things and became known for his role maturing activity-based intelligence and advancing automated sense making. Before his current assignment, he served as the Chief Strategy Officer at NGA, where he spearheaded strategic plans for a data-enabled workforce and artificial intelligence. His interests today include advancing automated sense making, space policy, and future remote sensing capabilities, all topics near and dear to Colorado's intelligence community. David Gauthier is currently the director of NGA's Commercial and Business Operations Group, also known as SC. In addition, he's also the chair of the IC's Commercial Remote Sensing Working Group. Please join me in welcoming my friend and future luminary, David Gauthier.
Well, thank you. First, I want to thank my good friend Cameron Ward-Hunt for the introduction. And a big thank you to Suzanne and INSA in particular for the invitation to speak with you today. I did serve the mission at ADF Colorado for 9 years, and it's an honor to be speaking at a Colorado-based event. But of course, I can't be there, so that's actually too bad. Disappointing. Suzanne asked me to start off with something I've been reading or listening to, so I thought I would throw a couple of things out there because in COVID lockdown, it's a perfect time to consume media. So my favorite podcast by far is Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History. He calls it a journey through the often overlooked and misunderstood, and it blows your mind every time. And this past season started with describing how art museums don't have to list their art collections as assets. And we'll leave it at that. But you know, a guilty pleasure for fun as far as a book. I did read The Paladin, which is a cyber espionage thriller about the dangers of deepfakes, and that's actually something I worry about for my work. So I guess my plans for some summer escapism actually failed. But anyway, you probably weren't here to listen to me ramble about books. I think I'm supposed to inspire you with some wisdom about the world of commercial geoints and how we build trusted relationships. And so I'll start off by saying it may sound overly simple, but I really believe trust requires shared effort and common goals. And it requires some sweat equity, and it definitely takes time. I was very lucky in my early career to work inside some mission forward environments where there was high trust, and I saw firsthand how that trust really made a difference in the outcomes we achieved. I do want to mention a number of things NGA has done through its history to build trusted partnerships. They go well beyond the IC, and I'd like to mention a few. First, the multinational geospatial co-production program. That has, for over 10 years, brought at least 30 nations together to produce topographic data for the world and greatly increase the currency of our maps. A more recent outgrowth of that is the Arctic DEM project, which is an NGA and National Science Foundation public-private partnership to produce high-res digital surface models of the Arctic to improve our scientific understanding of that great resource. It's done in partnership with a number of academic institutions, including the University of Illinois and their Blue Water supercomputer, and the University of Minnesota's Polar Geospatial Center, and the University of Alaska. I also wanted to mention the SpaceNet challenges, and I think there's certainly a Colorado tie-in here. These challenges for many years have advanced satellite imagery computer vision and made more commercial imagery available to more machine learning researchers than would be normal. It goes to show you that when multiple parties trust each other enough to make their data available and allow experts to work on hard problems, great things can happen. And SpaceNet 7 is getting underway now. NGA is very proud to partner with Maxar, Amazon, Planet, Capella, and others in this effort. Something you may not have realized, because most people never did, is the 2020 census effort has been underway. And the census used a lot of Digital Globe or Maxar imagery through our Global Enhanced Geoint Delivery Program. And they brought geospatial analysis to the census in that way, and they canvassed neighborhoods based on change detection. And by using this scientific method, they actually avoided hiring 90,000 census workers and saved the taxpayers about $1 billion. So that's a great return on investment for GEO. Another really interesting partnership we did in the last years is combating illicit logging and fishing. And so NGA Commercial Operations partnered with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, with the NIM for Africa, and the government of Gabon. And Gabon is actually a big country, over the size of Texas, a lot of jungle. And Maxar, again, pioneered a service called the Multi-Source Analytic Analytic Ready Information System, MARI. And that took unclassified data sources and trained with analysts some machine learning algorithms to find patterns of illegal activity. A 3-month demo worked so well, it resulted in automated alerts and sent the Gabonese military out to raid an illegal Chinese fishing vessel and to shut down an illegal Chinese gold mine. So we were thrilled with those results, and it proved to many, as we've proliferated this story, that there are machine learning, commercial GEOINT capabilities out in the market that can really have an impact on our mission. Of course, everyone knows how committed NGA is to humanitarian aid and disaster relief. And in fact, when I was the Chief Strategy Officer, I intentionally changed the language NGA uses from saying we support policymakers and warfighters to actually now saying we support policymakers, warfighters, and first responders. This is such a huge mission area for GEOINT, and we're very proud to grow in this area. And just today, a few hours ago, our own Frank Avila, who runs commercial discovery and assessments, brought together the U.S. Forest Service, the National Interagency Fire Center, NGA analysts, and Maxar to review prototype commercial products for firefighters in California, Oregon, Colorado. So I could keep going on and on, but I think you get the idea. And an incredible fact that ties all of those things together, all examples relied heavily on commercial GEOINT. And soon there will be more commercial GEOINT than non-commercial GEOINT. And already today we're using over 25 different commercial satellites, and the list keeps growing. As a community, we must be comfortable moving our tradecraft to where most of the data lives. And that means allowing sources to be fused and analyzed in unclassified environments. Our goal in commercial and business operations is to increase the nation's security by enabling trusted access to commercial GEOINT. And trust is a primary factor in our business and our transformation. I did want to mention a couple of new and different partnerships we're starting up for non-traditional data and analytic services. So first, to improve our analytic currency on some important mission issues, NGA is actively procuring commercial target baselines and vectorized observation metadata. Now, these services will benefit missions like economic monitoring, foundation military intelligence, and other analytic missions. A second project is focused on creating responsive products and services for the military. And just this month, we launched the Seagrass project. That stands for Commercial GEOINT Responsive Analytic Services for US Southcom. We recently brokered 3 contracts for Southcom support, and they will heavily use commercial synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, to create timely analytic services. You can imagine many of our military regions have an issue with the desire and mission need for high revisit, but they often are in areas where the weather can really sock in and deny electro-optical imagery. So the recent market explosion of commercial SAR offerings is something we really want to pounce on, take advantage of, and help the commands as best we can. So those are some tactical projects. I also want to tell everyone a little more about what we can all do strategically to advance trust in our community. So for new upstart companies with some novel geospatial ideas, if we feel they meet future GEOINT needs of the government, and they just need more help getting going and getting investment dollars and finding traction. We're starting to provide formal letters of interest that highlight NGA's interest in those companies. I'll mention we're also reaching out more readily to industry to collaborate. We'll be hosting our own industry day on November 12th to discuss fiscal year 21 planned investments for commercial data and analytic services, as well as some long-term commercial focus areas that are being defined in our commercial services needs study. I can't emphasize how important this needs study will be because it will set the stage for our requirements from the community for commercial services for a long time. I would say in another effort, we need the entire community's help to make sure our Discovery and Assessment Office can integrate the latest market research and product evaluation data to publish mission utility assessments and more knowledge to the government about all the offerings out there in commercial and academic settings. Part of the service we provide the government is trust. Trust that we've studied the geo market, we've evaluated the best of breed solutions, and then we've assessed them for quality and security. I like to call it the Angie's List of GeoInt, and everyone who wants to purchase some kind of service, needs this information online and up to date to help inform their decision. NGA also supports emerging community efforts like the Commercial Innovation Center as a trusted community space. This is Riverside Research Institute hosting the KIC as a virtual cloud-based DevOps environment where commercial data and developers can interact collectively in a way that not only protects their IP, but also creates new value. The KIC will expand the analytic ecosystem by reducing barriers to entry and enabling that experimentation to occur. So I think partnering with Riverside and the KIC is one way where we can get a broader set of partners creating value in the GeoInt ecosystem. And I guess you heard as part of my intro, I have an additional duty as the chair of the Intel Community's Commercial Remote Sensing Working Group. And in my capacity there, we're working with the rest of the US government to build our commercial remote sensing industry up to better compete in the global space economy. When you talk about the space economy and everything going on there, Colorado is almost ground zero for a lot of that work. And infusing more data and trusted partnerships here will open up a host of new commercial services. In particular, we're working on space situational awareness, space traffic management, basically the key infrastructure we need to protect the domain for people to operate in space. And we strongly desire commercial industry to play a role in providing those services and bringing that information to bear. So as I wrap up here, I often tell audiences about how we see the world now as a level playing field when it comes to the powers of observation. What we used to think of as a monopoly on satellite-based observation is no longer a monopoly. In fact, there's more foreign investment and more foreign launches scheduled over the next 5 years than we could ever hope to put up in the US alone. So if you follow Air Force's Colonel John Boyd, he wrote that any commander who can cycle through an OODA loop faster has the advantage. And OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, and act. And so unfortunately, we really can no longer rely on our ability to out-observe the adversary to have a decision advantage. And in great power competition, we really move our advantage to the orientation part of the OODA loop. Now, we need to make sense of all that observed data better and faster to orient our decision makers to action. And so what's great for me to see and remember is that some parts of the IC are already doing this. Yes, I'm talking again about ADF Colorado, mission-focused centers of excellence that are operating with high trust are the key to our future advantage. Places like Denver are orienting faster on new threats and new opportunities. So I think the broader IC could really learn from their example. And I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate your insights. And we have about 10 minutes for a Q&A. We have quite a few questions from our virtual attendees rolling in. I've got a couple that I would like to ask you as well. But you know, with many of the IC agencies having a presence there in Colorado, what do you see as some of the advantages of the IC working in Colorado? You know, particularly in this discussion today is not fully focused on COVID, thank goodness, but particularly in light of the pandemic, you know, geographical boundaries are broken down even more now, I would think, for the community than ever before.
Geographical boundaries are breaking down, and the move to virtual environments is fantastic, and I think will open up so many doors going forward. But there's certainly always a challenge of there is something lost in virtual environments. And so I do want to recall working in places like Colorado, where you have shared mission and proximity. And doing that over time, that proximity certainly enables you to develop trust and overcome misunderstandings very quickly. And it's not just the agencies working, you know, on Buckley or those folks. There's an ecosystem in Colorado of companies that are focused on space and other government efforts, academia, you know, and the government and military all working together there. So it is really something very powerful. I took that mindset from Colorado and came to, you know, DC in 2008, and it was almost shocking the difference I noticed in those days in how to work together. I was quickly assigned a project out of ODNI to go create a new collection campaign and bring 11 agencies together to some common vision, and it was a real hard thing to do, and it required us physically getting together and visiting each other's workspaces. So I think there's some greatness in Colorado that exists, you know, sort of baked in.
I would tend to agree. Well, I would like to let everybody know that we will be back in September 2021, as far as we know, to have a live event in Aurora. So the virtual format, we've been able to reach a lot of folks, but look forward to seeing everybody in person there next year. So, you know, regarding the growing space and counter space mission, do you see this as a focus area for the Colorado IC community? Are you anticipating any increased requirements for the workforce there?
Just given the role Colorado naturally has in the space domain, how could it not be a growth area, right? So the U.S. Space Force, a new military service, is stood up. You have Space Command in Colorado Springs. You have everything else going on in Colorado. Every day, I see that there's a greater appetite for knowledge and understanding of the domain. And there are serious gaps. You know, it is a very difficult place to operate. And we're doing a lot that we can to enable industry to innovate and prove out capabilities on orbit more than ever before. And so I have some friends in NASA, and I keep bugging them about how did NASA do this with their commercial launch, commercial resupply, commercial crew program. And now, you know, I think that someone in there, there's something funny in their water, because they just announced that they're going to pay commercial companies to bring back moon rocks. So they are so forward leaning when it comes to commercial augmenting their operations. We're really trying to push in the same direction. And that's something I'm advocating for. And I think the mix of everything you need is right there in Colorado. So that's great.
Great. So a very practical question from Marianne Myers, who was clearly paying attention to your opening remarks. She wants to know where she can get more information on the industry day that will be held in November, and also will it be virtual?
Ooh, yes, it is a virtual industry day, and information will be forthcoming. I think our first announcement about it happens this morning or yesterday afternoon. So NGA might have put out a media release on that. We're going out through USGIF. I'll push it through you and INSA if that's okay.
Absolutely. Happy to share.
Get it out to as many people as possible.
So late breaking news. So Tish Long, INSA's chair, says, hi, Dave. Thanks for being with us today. I imagine many on this wait, hang on, I need my glasses, sorry. I imagine many of us on this webcast are wondering, how does a startup company go about getting a letter of interest? Good question, Tish.
That is a great question, and it's been done once by a startup company, so it has been done. It is possible. I guess there's probably two paths. So I work a lot with Christy Monaco in the Office of Ventures and Innovation as well, and so her team is very involved in what I would call the defense innovation ecosystem, DIU, AFWorks, et cetera. And so when they let out those SBIR phase 1 and phase 2 awards, there's an opportunity to go seek letters of interest to help you when you've been awarded an SBIR. And so Christy actually has a whole program that does that. I do something completely different. I'm looking for people who are really bringing a novel idea, and it is a long-term strategic play. It's probably an idea on paper, and they're still seeking early rounds of investment. If it meets a lot of the criteria that would serve our future needs, my organization can put out a letter of interest in that regard as well. And so you really have to make an introduction to NGA's industry engagements team. That's Christy Monaco and myself, and we will eventually kind of guide you into the right path. So.
Okay, that's helpful. Good to know. Christy, look out. Mark Kriz asked, how is your organization allowing for more unclassified development during the pandemic?
Okay, well, the commercial GeoInt has been incredibly helpful in that regard. We have distribution and delivery systems that were set up to bring commercial imagery to customers around the world. I mentioned Global EGD. There's also a program through Black Sky Global that we call the, I think it's the prototype, the Predictive GeoInt Platform, PGP. And so through them, we are getting access to other vendor sources of data as well. And what we were able to do with those as data sources, and the iSpy effort, which is an app that people could use at home, is bring commercial sources of GeoInt to analysts who could then produce in the unclassified environment and get some of their work done. So that was incredibly helpful. In source, especially in the Foundation GeoInt world, we have the GNOME platform, the NSG Open Mapping Enclave, and that has enabled thousands of users to crowdsource map features into the environment. And so that's also been a really big win in the teleworking environment.
So time is flying by. So I have time for one more question, and then I wanted to see if you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share. But here's a question from Stuart Levin. He wants to know how NGA is integrating geospatial data with non-traditional sources of data, for example, radio frequency mapping.
Yes, so I like to say, if you can put it on a map, we want it. And so RF mapping is mapping. It's right there in the description. So, and so is so much other I would call it non-pixel, non-imagery derived geospatial data sources. There are layers of human geography. There's crowdsourced information about the environment and place that are incredibly useful. not to mention the RF that was mentioned and several other sources. We are in some experimental settings. We have something called applied mission innovation teams that use those non-traditional sources, marry them up to traditional sources, create tradecraft, and teach the workforce. That's one way of government doing some of that in-house. More interesting to me is encouraging industry to partner with other industry members, bring your sources of data together, collaborate in those relationships, and find mutual benefit by fusing your data and providing value-added services. And so really excited to be a consumer of services that have those things under the hood, so to speak.
Well, and fits very well within the theme of this continued programming, which is the common threads between the academic and private sector and public sector as well. So that is, we have about 10 more questions, none of which we're going to be able to get to. So maybe I can forward them on after our conversation. But just wanted to see if you had any closing thoughts you want to share with this group of folks from across the country.
Okay, first, I forgot to acknowledge that that Tish Long said hi, so I wanted to say hi back to Tish. Thank you for that. And second, it should be pretty obvious that building partnerships across all these different boundaries and communities needs to be a part of our DNA, and that is because we know that we cannot maintain a geo advantage alone. General Clapper used to say GeoInt is a team sport, and he couldn't be more on the truth. So our greatest strength is in our alliances. And so if you aren't working with us, I encourage you to start now. If you are working with us, let's go further. And together we'll take on, this time of great power competition, and we'll inspire the world to become a better place through GeoInt. So thank you.
Great parting words. Really appreciate your time this afternoon. Hope you'll tune in for the panel discussion. And before we start with the panel discussion, I did want to mention, I didn't see any questions from any students in the Q&A box. So I'm hopefully when we get onto the panel, a few students will submit their questions. Those are always some of my favorites. So thanks again, Dave. Really appreciate it. And now I am pleased to introduce Bob Canty, who is the Vice President of Constellation Management and Protection for Raytheon Intelligence Services and Space. And he is going to introduce our moderator today. So thanks, Bob. Thanks to Raytheon Intelligence and Space for your support of today's programming.
Thank you, Suzanne. Raytheon Intelligence and Space is a proud supporter of INZA, its mission to address our nation's national security priorities through private-public sector collaboration. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's panel discussion. Colonel Jen Sobata, United States Air Force retired, is Mission Tech Solutions Chief Future Officer with responsibilities for integrating new technologies and best practices in the government. Previously, Jen served for more than 25 years as an Air Force intelligence officer and held high-level positions across the IC, including Chief of Talent Management for the Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance and Cyber Effects Operations, and Wing Commander of the Air Force Technical Applications Center. Over to you, Jen.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and we are so excited today to have a panel to discuss really bringing intelligence community professionals together from across the country to discuss the importance of establishing strong collaborative relationships between the public, private, and academic sectors. So first, I'd like to start off by giving introductions on our panel members. Today we have 4 panel members, and I'll start off with Jackie Brewer. Jackie Brewer is a GeoInt officer as well as the Denver Division Chief for NGA. Ms. Brewer's past positions include assignments as a manager and analyst for the Air Force Intelligence Analysis Agency and as an analyst at the United States Special Operations Command in Tampa, Florida, and at the CIA. In 2019, she co-founded Rocky Mountain Intelligent Women, a group that provides networking opportunities in intelligence-related professions. Ms. Brewer served in the national headquarters of a major U.S. political party and was a member of the first group of U.S. interns in the British Parliament. Laurel Chestnut has been the Deputy Director for NGA Denver since September 2019. She originally started with the agency on military orders in 2005 after she transitioned to a contractor role supporting NGA in Denver in 2008. Most recently, Ms. Chestnut served as the Deputy for NGA Support Team to NORAD and U.S. Northcom. And during her over 20-year career in the U.S. Navy, Ms. Chestnut completed both active duty and reserve assignments. Notably, she has worked for Fighter Squadron 127, ONI, FBI, DIA, European Command, and Strategic Command. A little bit of everything in there. Catherine Mills serves as the Compliance Manager for the University of Colorado Boulder's Center for National Security Initiatives, a multidisciplinary research center that she helped to establish earlier this year. Ms. Mills got her start in the intelligence community working as an international business development contractor in Northern Virginia before shifting to export control work and later to classified military and intelligence analysis and operations. In 2015, she moved to Denver, Colorado to support the University of Colorado Boulder as an export controls analyst and spent time working as the Director of International Trade Compliance for Boom Supersonic, an aviation startup based in Colorado. And our final panel member today is Darren Turner. Darren Turner is the Director of NSA CSS Colorado, where he leads the workforce producing integrated intelligence critical to national missions and priorities worldwide. Since joining NSA as a senior leader, Mr. Turner has had several additional assignments to include serving as the NSA CSS rep to U.S. Cyber Command. Mr. Turner also served as the Director for Intelligence Programs on the National Security Council staff and retired from the Navy after a distinguished career that spanned multiple sea, shore, and leadership assignments, to include serving as the Combat Information Center Officer and Assistant Operations Officer on the USS Mississippi, holding positions at both the NRO and NSA, and commanding the Naval Security Group Activity Pearl Harbor. And believe it or not, we were both at NSA at the same time when I was a squadron commander for the Air Force, and you were working in S2. So it's a small community that we have in the intelligence community. And even though we're in a pandemic timeframe, it still seems to be that we're able to continue to build our relationships and our partnerships. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So since I just talked to Mr. Turner about your bio, let's start off with a question for you. And once we get to the questions between the panel members, please, as Suzanne had said, if you have questions, please populate them and we will do our best to get to them. So Darren, the first question we have for you is, many companies across the nation have spoken of crisis paralysis. And I think some of us feel this on a day-to-day basis when we're trying to work through COVID on a daily basis, even how do we get dressed in the morning? And yet federal agencies have taken time during the pandemic to begin discussions on reimagining. What does the intelligence community look like? What does the organization look like? And so what does that mean to your agency? And in what ways could your organization in Denver find better ways to structure and evolve their business and the workforce?
So Jen, thank you very much, both for the introduction, obviously for the opportunity to be here today, and to answer such a kind of open-ended, very direct, but yet wholly encompassing, describe the universe, give 3 example type questions. So,
5 minutes less.
Exactly. So there's a couple of things that I want to echo that David stated in his keynote speech earlier. The first is on the work has no geographic boundaries. So we have a greater opportunity to partner a little bit more. And I'll come back to that word in a moment. The second thing that David echoed was really how the non-geographic boundaries allows us the opportunity to explore new ways of working together. So a couple things that I really want to continue to focus on. The first is partnerships. I alluded to that briefly in echoing something David had mentioned, but when you look at partnerships, you have to add in the word resiliency. How do we build ourselves up so that we can operate in an environment that is restricted? So wait a minute, who has to build up? Who has to operate? It is our people. It is the talent that we bring in. And although I will probably mention that several different times today, the main thing that comes across is not necessarily just talent at the National Security Agency, but it's talent across the intelligence community. It's talent within the community, both in academia as well as industry. And it is meshing those levels of capabilities, vice drawing lines, again, going back to David's comment about breaking down barriers that allows us to get to the next point. Our adversaries continue. They didn't stop with COVID. They didn't stop doing what they did on a regular basis. And they're now starting to operate, and now is a kind of a loose term. Now it could be the last 10 or so years, but really operating in areas that are non-traditional environments. Things like cybersecurity risk and what that brings to an organization, both internally and externally. Adversary activity beneath the level of armed conflict. How do we deal with that as we continue and we move forward? And then one that's obviously dear to General Nakasoni's heart and is our top priority, and that is interference with our national elections. The very core of democracy, and one of the things that we've all raised our right hand and sworn an oath to. So we know that NSA, it's no secret that we operate historically, maybe behind the door. You can pick a number of different analogies that fit, but effectively not in the limelight. I have to admit, I never thought as I was growing up, I would ever be participating in a panel in an unclassified discussion. But here we are as we move forward. But the funny thing about it is, with COVID-19 and the pandemic itself, it offered us a way to look at things in a whole new light. Prior to, and I thought I would wait till about halfway through this answer to inject this little gem, way before COVID, NSA had started embarking on a path of how do we prioritize telework? How do we get better at moving things outside of the SCIF, outside where we can build a little bit more, leverage more of our base, both in academia and industry, and kind of take it to the next level, all at the same time while fulfilling our critical missions, because the mission hasn't changed. We still have to be able to protect our nation. We do that in a couple different ways. We do that through operating as one team. We do that through communication early and often. We do that in clear and timely communication. And most of all, we do that by taking care of ourselves, and we take care of each other. So when I say we looked at things with a new light and taking the pandemic, one of the things that strikes me the most is we looked around for opportunities as our workforce day to day dwindled over the months. We looked at opportunities to really rethink how we do business. And we came to some really, really good thoughts. The first was innovate a little bit more around the telework perspective. The second was innovate in an unclassed environment. What physically has to be operated on behind the SCIF? And look for ways to work smarter. Another way you might look at that is we're really attacking the resiliency angle here. We're looking at people. How do we attract top talent? How do we move forward with them? Technology, what do we use? We're on technology now that we're able to utilize, and we can do that securely, but in an unclassified fashion to ensure that we have and are able to broadcast what we're looking to do. And then finally, and by no means least, it is about process. We are a government agency, and quite frankly, from a process perspective, if we were able to outline it and we were able to articulate, codify that process, then, oh my goodness, we're actually able to sustain it or reproduce it or scale it. So it gives us the opportunity to move to the next level. Now, I mentioned, and I'll kind of stop after this next comment, give others an opportunity to kind of inject. But really, when I talk about the telework side itself, I'm really talking about the fact that we're talking software development. How do we increase our software development capabilities? Hiring and recruiting. We don't need to do that in an unclassified environment. We can move that completely into the unclassified capability, from recruiting to interviewing to holding individual notes. And quite frankly, before I transition out to NSA Colorado, I interviewed a couple dozen students at Texas A&M University. So just, I walk through that process and how we move that moving forward. Professional development, the actual ability to tell someone to come to, I don't know, an INSA panel, listen to what's happening here, and have that kind of work within the professional development necessary to bring someone to the next level. And then finally, in the general research category, I think we've all been in the community long enough to know that we don't often start with a classified data point that we're looking for. We often look at it primarily as, hey, we're going to do this general research, and then we'll look into the application as it moves to the classified environment. And with that, I'll stop, Jen, and wait for the next question.
Great. Thank you so much. And I know, Laurel, within NGA, you've had a lot of similar challenges. And so I'd like to ask you, based on the pandemic and how NGA is really trying to reimagine their workforce, what are you doing within your office and within NGA at large to keep employees focused, not only on the mission, but also on engagement with other priorities that are going on?
Well, thank you, Jen. Thanks for the question. Similar to what Darren keyed on, pre-COVID, teleworking was kind of a nice to have thing. If you really wanted to, maybe one day every pay period, you could do some mandatory training from home. Post-COVID, it quickly became a critical need for us. NGA was really well postured in the sense that they had the sensitive but unclassified, or SBU, system already in place that allowed for official use only connectivity that a lot of people already had at home. If not, it was very quickly established. We gave out CAT card readers to folks to connect to their computers. Anybody in the military, I think, knows how to do that as well. And so we were able to ramp up our presence and be effective and shift to SBU very quickly. I think the capacity just exploded within a few weeks from our technology side. In addition to that, they shifted all of the IT support immediately to the unclassified side as opposed to being on the classified support side. That helped tremendously because people were having issues getting connected. Mac owners, Mac users, right? That had to be, different. But we worked through all of that, and we had needed and the infrastructure and the backbone that we needed in order to do that. We also transitioned very, very quickly to the video teleconferencing via unclassified. Our director, Admiral Sharp, has conducted, I believe we're on 26, I think this week will be 27, of his unclassified town halls that he's conducted on WebEx. I don't want to put money on it, but I'm pretty sure he was the first IC director to do an unclassified town hall in a WebEx or a video teleconferencing environment. And so that just led the way for us here at NGA Denver to be able to do the same thing. So we jumped onto that bandwagon and we started mirroring his approach and doing unclassified town halls for our Denver NGA community. I think back to your question too, this unclassified presence allows us to be more present and more opportunities to interact with our industry and academia partners because we're in their space now. I've heard multiple stories of people who had been working with developers, but the developers are working in the unclassified environment and they were squirreled away in their classified environment all day. So they really didn't have a chance for long discussions and connections. And this unclassified environment has helped build those relationships and the understanding of the developers of what we were looking for because of this transition.
Great. Now I would like to, since you brought it up, of working with sort of academia and the private sector, Catherine, since you're coming from a university perspective, how do you see local colleges and universities fitting into these activities, especially this new activity with new access to members of the Colorado national security industry, whether it's the private sector or the public sector when we're talking about the intelligence community? And do you think that there are any best practices that might translate to other regions of the country that you might see based on what you're doing at Boulder?
Thank you for the question. So I think local Colorado colleges and universities are fitting into the rapidly expanding national security industry here at the Front Range by adapting their traditional research strengths to meet current national security requirements. At CU Boulder, for example, we were able to utilize our strong aerospace engineering research tradition, one that made us the #1 public funded or NASA public funded school in the country, to develop expertise within very specific research fields such as hypersonics and space domain awareness and geospatial data analytics to address specific national security needs of our industry and federal partners. Nationwide, I think if universities aren't already doing so, they really need to look at their local national security industry and determine those specific needs in their local area as well, and see how that matches up to their existing core capabilities as it pertains to their research strengths. Once those are determined, they need to make sure that their researchers and their intellectual capital is available to the local national security industry through, appropriate research vehicles. They also need industry and federal partners, as to Ms. Chestnut's and Mr. Turner's points earlier, need to make sure that they are communicating their needs and requirements in an environment that could potentially be done in an unclassified setting, especially because very many universities do not have specific access to classified communications, classified rooms, such as that. There's also, of course, the fundamental research mission of a lot of research universities, as well as an international student and faculty population that that industry and federal sponsors need to be aware of. Additionally, I think it's really important to understand the importance of universities and colleges in workforce development for the national security industry. And universities and industry and federal partners all need to work together to develop opportunities for these trained students, especially opportunities that allow for clearances as early as possible so that they can enter this workforce as quickly as possible after graduation.
That's great. I know that we all really would love to have sped up processes for clearances. We would love to have access to new talent and to people who are in a younger generation more quickly. So that is, those are all really good points to make. And Jackie, I know that within your office in particular, you've had a lot of challenges and a lot of success with your fairly large office. So based on what Laurel talked about, and Darren and Catherine, can you kind of provide a little bit more of a perspective from a user or somebody in the trenches trying to make this happen?
Sure, thanks very much for having me. Yeah, I'd like to maybe direct you a little bit off of mission and a little bit more toward our workforce. On March 19th, when I was instructed to have my office depart, my biggest concern was not how the mission was going to be taken care of. As intelligence professionals, I think that we've all been under very stressful situations where we've just gone ahead and we make it happen. We press through the tension and the stress. But there was a different kind of stress in the air, and like everyone else, I didn't know what that stress was, but I had an idea that things were changing. And as it happened, our entire world flipped up and over on its side. And even an intelligence professional feels that tension. So all the great things that Laurel and NGA Denver and the site did to help us really needed to be complemented with some work on the employees themselves. So we did a lot with taking mandatory classes together. We were some of the first to actually get onto a Zoom site at the time, before Zoom became not acceptable, and to have a division meeting, to look each other in the eye and say, we have problems and challenges, and what are those? People were anxious, and I felt that as a leader, I needed to be very calm and deliberate about giving them a sense of hope and control, to give them some tools. And so one of the things that I did do for them, beyond just showing incredibly sincere appreciation for all they did for all of our partners and our stakeholders and our customers was to let them become part of the decision making, and or at least to validate a decision if I made it. And I think that really helped them because they started to understand that there's more to what we do than just making our customer happy. There are risks, there are ramifications. They needed to understand those. And I never hid bad news. So they were able to understand when bad news came along, we took it together. It was never one person. There were some professional bad news things that happened. We just got over them. Like I said, they found new ways to communicate. And we also knew there were professional bad news items, personal bad news items that would happen. We also took those together. And what it turned out was we were all suffering from grief. Grief is unwanted change, and we need to address it that way. And I think that Laurel and Shishu in particular have been so helpful in us kind of exploring how do you do that in an office. I believe my team has really shown their colors because we let them express what they were feeling, let them decide what would happen to them, let them sort of share together that I don't have kids, but you have kids, and I can't believe you're going to have to make a decision about sending them to school. And how does that affect what we're doing in the office? It was a grand and glorious moment when we finally made those things happen together. So we can't just say to our employees, be strong, be resilient. Those are great keywords for an agency, but for an office, I think we need to get down in the dirt and really start to work with people and their personal situations. So we've had very good luck with that.
That's amazing to hear. I know that there's so much anxiety on, especially within the intelligence community, of what does it look like going forward, especially as we try to reintegrate and bring people back, and people who don't want to come back, either because they like working with Windows or because they have other issues at home that they're still working through with kids at school, or compromised relatives that have autoimmune diseases, or other things that they're dealing with on a regular basis. And many times people think that it's just a technology problem, when in reality, there's so much more involved in that. But you know, one of the questions that Connie Wineland asks, and maybe I'll throw this one to you, Darren. She asks, to enable more remote work in the wake of the pandemic, maybe to offset some of these fears of people who are really reluctant to come back because of some of the issues that they're facing. How important is to have technologies that enable remote classified work, such as those being piloted by the Army?
So Jen, I think you were sending that to me. You were a little broken, so I just wanted to verify that. And if I can paraphrase a question, what I heard was what are the advancements being made on the classified telework arena?
Right, as well as how important is it to have classified telework capability?
So I think I'm going to answer the question in reverse order, because that second question kind of leads itself just perfectly to it. Earlier this year, I mentioned that NSA had started working on or leaning forward in the telework industry, trying to determine what within NSA could be done essentially outside the wire. To that end, the Deputy Director, George Barnes, commissioned a 45-day telework planning team to kind of look across the mission set and answer that very question. How much of our work is done on a classified system at system high that really has nothing to do with classification? But we essentially bring our folks inside the wire to have them telework on a computer system that's in our closed network. And so that's where those things like professional development, software development all came from. We saw that there was an incredible amount of capabilities that even if we were to work those at 100%, we would see a significant increase in the number of folks who are doing telework. And to really kind of quote Jackie, it's kind of make them feel a lot more comfortable, because you're not having the same number of folks working through the same activities. So I think that in and of itself is the mission side. Now, to answer the classified side, naturally, that is being looked at. I don't think we will ever get to a point where we go to some of our classification levels, but I think having things at the secret level are definitely within the art of the possible, and in some ways already occur, but just not to scale.
So I will turn this back over. I would like to kind of throw this out to both Jackie and Laurel, and maybe Jackie, you could answer first, since you were really down in the weeds with your employees and office members. Were there any other requests besides technological support that people were really looking for and asking for as we move forward and as life changes in this post-pandemic environment?
So much as a person in grief would, and probably my entire office will now put hate mail on my desk, the first thing they wanted was their lives back. They wanted their old life. They wanted their comfort zone back. We can't give that. But after that, what they really wanted was they wanted connection. They wanted to see their customers. They wanted to see their coworkers. When we couldn't do it in person, they were satisfied with the online. A lot of what they do in my office couldn't be done on the outside, but they found new projects because they wanted to be busy. They didn't want to just sit at home. As fun as the window was the first week, then they were done with that. So I think that's what they were really looking for, was to get that connection. And now that we're going in for a couple days a week, you can see the joy that is coming back. And they're finding that now they can balance off and go outside of the building feeling comfortable that they're going to get something done. Their customers are going to be happy, but they'll come back and they'll see coworkers and get things done there too.
And Catherine, I'm sorry, Laurel, please go ahead. You were going to chime in.
No, I just wanted to add, and Jackie's been an incredible leader in our organization, an incredible example for our teams as well, and how to lead us through this. So I want to thank her. But people can only do so much professional development before they get kind of burned out on that. So to Jackie's point, really meaningful work was what people were asking for. They wanted to added value. They did not want to feel like they were not doing their full 100% or more from home. One project that Dave Gauthier mentioned, many projects that were out there. One that was specific that a lot of folks in Denver used was called Project Maven. So that was a data labeling pilot where they could use commercial imagery to label objects for automated intelligence, machine learning, computer vision algorithms. And they actually had competitions for how many people could do so much labeling, and they would put out in emails the top 3 producers for Project Maven every week. So they really made it something that people found valuable, actually had a mission impact. And I think that's really what it comes down to. People want to feel valuable.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's fun to see the Project Maven labeling. I think a lot of organizations did something similar and ran many competitions among organizations to see who could label the most, which adds a little bit of gamesmanship to it for all of those younger students out there who are really lacking their need to come back in. And so, Catherine, speaking of sort of the younger student generation, Charlie Reese asks, how hard is it for students nowadays to get security clearances, especially in the Colorado area where marijuana usage is legal? Have you run into issues or concerns with that?
I was anticipating that question, actually. So I think every agency has its own standards of what they consider, appropriate marijuana use. I know the FBI recently has, had a certain amount of time period that they find acceptable. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, really, because obviously there's always some type of risk involved with any of that. Really what we do at the university is we try to encourage students that have a desire to work within the intelligence community or the military, for that matter, to really just be thoughtful and cognizant of their activities, not only as it pertains to maybe marijuana use or other type of drug use, but also with their engagements overseas, you know, their general behavior, you know, as much as people talk about marijuana, you know, DUIs are equally as, you know, inappropriate as part of security backgrounds. So, you know, as you can probably see with the COVID responses on a lot of campuses, one of the biggest intel gaps is student behavior, especially undergraduate behavior. So what we try to do, especially as part of the National Security Initiative, where we really do want to work with students, get them ready for this entry into workforce development, is just socializing them with the requirements that come with working in this environment. You know, the personal responsibility that you might not anticipate if you were working for maybe a startup or another company that doesn't require a security clearance. One of the things that I noticed working with students and going through a process myself when I was in graduate school is I don't think people, especially students, understand how much information you need to provide, how much you need to understand and think about what your past behavior and your relationships mean as part of the overall security clearance. So again, it's really just an awareness and a polite asking for them to just be a little bit responsible if this is really the path that they want to take.
That's very good advice for young people, not just people in their younger careers, but even midterm people who want to join the intelligence community after another part of their career has been changed. So I've seen that before. So Jackie, Rhoda McFarland asks, you mentioned how important it is to accommodate people's situations during the pandemic, but because the IC works in SCIFs, and the IC is really bringing people back and reconstituting people and starting to bring, you know, 90% sometimes up to, how do we continue to really accommodate the workforce's needs if they are unable to work in a classified environment because of some of those situations that you talked about?
One of the most important things to start with was that I become aware of all of those situations. And of course, there's legal complications. I can't go up to someone and say, are you sick? But if I build the credibility and the trust with my people, they did not feel that it was a vulnerable place to be, to say to me, you know, my dad lives with me and he's really sick and I just don't feel comfortable in coming to work. When they did that, we could then start to make decisions together, and we did it as a group. As I said, we're in now 2.5 days apiece. We made that decision together as an office of 50. As you can imagine, there is a lot of, there's home situations, there's meeting situations, but my meeting is on Wednesday and you've put me off on Wednesday. Because we had been working all these months together and looking each other in the eye, and you see my office behind me, you don't just see that big brown and gray cubicle. So now we could start to have those conversations. And I think that's where we really need to be with each and every office. So it's a great question, but it's very individualized. And I think we can do it. Right now, I don't foresee a problem in my office getting our work done and maintaining where we're at right now. I'd hate to see us go backwards, but I think we can maintain where we're at because of those things that we've done.
Now, I would say that one of the main topics that people are talking about right now is psychological safety, and having the ability to have those conversations with superior coordinates, coworkers, anybody, in order to make sure that they feel like they can voice what they need to in order to be mentally resilient, you know, spiritually whole and safe physically as well. That's great.
Yeah, if I go back to that definition again of grief being unwanted change, think about how you treat someone who loses a loved one. What they really want to do is tell you how they feel. And if you allow people that are in grief for their life or for the fact that their kids used to go to school at 9 and come home at 4 and they didn't have to worry about anything else, then you'll start to build even more trust. And the customer can do nothing but feel good about the fact that they get better service out of us, because we do feel that psychological safety.
So Laurel, here's a question for you that I'm going to toss to you. So Paul Kelly asks, You have supported NGA in multiple ways, military officer, civilian, and a contractor. So you've seen public-private sector and both sides of the fence. And how do you think the work has changed as your employment status has changed? Or are there things that you think from your perspective that could be done better?
Gosh, I think it's been dependent upon where I was sitting at the time as to what I saw. So things have definitely changed. I think the rate of change has been frustrating. So I think we can see where we need to be as far as mostly technology, automation, those kinds of things. But I think the biggest frustration out of that is that it's not as easy for that to happen as it is in the commercial industry. And transferring that knowledge and that capability that we know exists to the classified environment has been challenging. And so I would say that would be the biggest frustration is the time piece, because we know what we need, we know how to get there. For the most part, it's just connecting all those dots in a cohesive fashion within our infrastructure.
Right. So this sort of relates to the same question, and this is for anyone who wants to answer it. Puneet Sanhi, I think is the name, asks, whereas in DC, the cleared labor market is fairly large, and the smaller cleared population in Denver seems to probably be harder to find people to fill critical intelligence roles. And so what extent is the intel agencies across the board, whether it's NSA, NGA, or anybody at ADF Colorado, as well as the contractors, able to meet requirements without poaching each other and cannibalizing each other? And I know it goes on in DC on a regular basis, so how do you try to encourage an environment where you're sharing resources?
Maybe I'll let Meryl think about it for a minute. But one of the things that I see is that here in Colorado, that's the place where we can best have collaboration. If that helped the echo. And we can start to work together to say there's one pool and we can't all have it. So the federal office, even state offices who want geospatial specialists, and then we've got academia who want somebody to come in and be professors or support people, and we can't all have it. But if we were to get together and have that kind of discussion on what's our focus here, these emerging needs that we have, what kind of skill set do we want, and what have we got? Certainly big companies are coming into Colorado at a rapid rate, and they'll bring people with them, but that takes time. And they also come oftentimes with better benefits and better salaries. So some of our local businesses and startups then still get stuck in that pool and not having what they need. So I think this is a huge collaboration issue, that if we could put a bunch of people and then start it over again, once we get some answers, expand our stakeholders and start to talk about it again.
I would jump in and say it's Denver. So we haven't had a whole lot of hard time twisting people's arms to come to Denver from our headquarters location. And Jackie's a good example. She had worked out east before she came out here. And we were lucky to get her. But again, we've got high quality people that are wanting to come out here, not to mention the military population here. So we've got a variety of commands out here that want careers after they're done with their 20, 25, 30-year stint. And so we get a lot of really qualified folks that want to transition, say, to civilian jobs or contractor jobs from those military careers. So those are the areas that I haven't seen a lot of trouble finding well-qualified folks coming in.
Thank you for telling me. I was reading back to Lawrence, so I wanted to myself. The question I have is, Denver is the largest concentration of U.S. government employees outside of the DC area. are there any particular functions that are better suited for the intelligence community in Denver, especially as ADFC is organized to handle more so than the Washington, D.C. region?
Who was that to?
It's a Darren. If you have any comments, or Laurel, or if anybody would like to chime in, I'm happy to hear.
So I'm happy to jump on that. I actually thought I heard Laurel, so that's why I was hesitating. Maybe it was, a desire in my mind for her to take the first shot. But, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. And I want to go back even to the last question for a moment to say, to echo what Jackie and Laurel are both saying, in a lot of cases, it's from a Denver perspective. It's not about necessarily drawing a line between the talent. It's about common purpose, common intent, building connections. And that includes also in Catherine's world, right? So whether it's academia, whether it's industry, one of the beauties about working here in particular, and why you're not seeing an awful lot of the poaching that goes on, is because we all bring something unique to the fight, but yet just as your hand needs all 5 digits, we need all 3, 4, 5, however what the right number is, to kind of come together. And so I don't think you see an awful lot of that. You're still going to get some. Hold on a second. All right, let's see if that works. So now back on to your question with regards to Denver and being outside of the DC area. Quite frankly, I think a lot of this has to do with risk. And where do you impose, where do you hold, where do you define, and how do you mitigate that risk? And I think having that capability outside of the DC area also puts you in that space.
Laurel, did you want to add anything? I don't want to cut you off this time.
No, the only other thing I thought of was when you talk about poaching, I almost want to welcome the poaching because it brings with it that cross-fertilization between the different ents. And, we learn to speak each other's languages in Denver, and that only increases that trust and collaboration and the ability to do the mission better, faster, and just grow it. And I'd also say, being in Denver, I think we almost have a freedom from my 15 years at the ADF. There's this freedom of trying things, and research is a big part of this. We have research labs and things like that, but there's that culture of, well, let me go ask and let me go talk to this expert that sits over here with this agency and see what we can do. And I don't know that, if it's just the different headquarters locations in DC that you'd have to make an effort to go visit them makes the difference, but it is a culture that I have seen consistently over 15 years.
It's interesting that innovation is done very well in inclusive environments. And Catherine, I'd like to bring you into this conversation as well, because the academic community has done innovation research all over. And Becky Reed in particular asks a question of how much does geography matter in establishing partnerships between the IC and academia, especially when you're talking about innovative research? And how close are those ties between the intel agencies in Denver and the local universities like UC Boulder right now?
So I do think that the Front Range is very unique in its national security research and innovation ecosystem. We've got that really strong defense industrial base. We've got the very strong military and federal presence, as we've talked about. And then we've got numerous top tier research entities, not just universities, but also research institutes like UCAR. And I think in our specific ecosystem, we have a very specific group of capabilities, especially around Earth observation. Again, with our engagement with Space Command. So the aerospace research and development, not just at CU Boulder, but some at our other Colorado universities like the School of Mines and Colorado State University, you have that sort of traditional research capabilities that have allowed for a really, really kind of critical mass of researchers within this environment. So I do think there is some geographical benefits, especially to being here in Denver for specific types of intelligence community. But I think as we become more remote, especially now with COVID, that I've seen an increase in collaborations of sort of like-minded researchers across the nation, especially in places like artificial intelligence and machine learning. I think researchers seek each other out, especially if they're looking at kind of tackling similar types of problems for similar types of sponsors, especially within the IC and the DoD. So the way that we've increased our engagement with the national security industry kind of is on the flip side of what everybody's been talking about, bringing stuff into the classified realm. We've been preparing ourselves to potentially go into the classified realm and increase the data security and everything that comes along with it, probably to the surprise of a lot of the more traditional academics, but it's really been important, especially as we look and see sort of this globalization and this team effort in specific types of industries and research concerns as it pertains, to geospatial, data analytics, space domain awareness, all of that stuff. We really do have to be consistent in how we approach it. And then also make sure that we have the right compliance and data security protocols in place as well.
Jen, if I could add to that, Jen, real quick. NGA and CU Boulder signed their first Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, or CRADA, December 2019. And so that enables joint research and a wide variety of topics, but to include things like computer vision, space weather, and space situational awareness are some of the topics of projects that I think we're working jointly with CU Boulder on. So we very much welcome that partnership. And that's the first one that we put together locally, and we're hoping that we can do more of that.
Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. And I would like to give each of you an opportunity to do a lightning summary or provide concluding comments or anything else that you'd like to add that you didn't get a chance to touch on today. And I will start with Jackie, since you're the first one I'm looking at on my screen. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I'm really pleased to have been here. I've even learned few things, so that's nice. I would like to bring up the organization that I founded here in Denver and the reason why. One was it actually stemmed out of INSA and the INSA event that was here in Denver in person. We saw a need for women who wanted to perhaps meet more informally about some professional topics, and it's morphed over the past year. It's been interesting to watch it. We've gotten a lot of students involved because they really don't have any training on how to build their network. And funny that their number one question was not about marijuana use, it was about the polygraph and what it was really like. But it's more like a cocktail party, if I can call it that, or just having coffee with friends. But we have now decided to rebrand ourselves, and we're open up to men, and we're going to probably move out of the Front Range as well, keeping this here, but moving into some other areas. A lot of people have found that the organization is just real interesting and useful to people. So I really encourage people, if they'd like to learn something, I believe our new name is going to be iCircle for IC Circle, and we'll be able to come to different areas.
Is there a way people can contact you?
Yes, so they can contact us at, I think we're going to change our email address, but they can contact me through INSA, or Laurel is also a member, and we can put people in touch with the right people. If they'd like to start something in their area, we can certainly do that as well. Great.
Catherine, on to you. Any closing comments, please?
Well, thank you again very much for having me. I think it is important to, include academic voices within, this research and development and innovation within the national security industry. I did just want to do a quick plug for CU Boulder and other top tier research universities across the country. I know there's been a lot of talk about academic security, insider threat and foreign influence in the academic world in the news, and I just want to vouch for both myself and my colleagues across the country at these top tier research universities. We take this very seriously. We are making a lot of major strides and upgrades across really the entire academic community to address these concerns, as well as address sort of the changing regulatory landscape as it pertains to the DoD and the IC. I think that we really are ready and able and willing to accept kind of some more of these restricted and controlled projects, even all the way up to the classified level if we have the capability. So, please take a chance on us. We do really take this very seriously, and we do want to be partners with the IC and the DoD.
Great. Laura?
I'd just like to say, first of all, I've been remiss in introducing my telework comfort animal. This is Jake, so he keeps popping in and out. But just to say that don't forget to check in on people still. This isn't over yet. I still know of quite a few people on our team that are still staying very isolated. So I would say to please continue to check in on folks that you know. The other thing I would say is this has been, we're going to try to make this a blessing if we can, in the sense that sometimes we need a kick in the pants to figure out how to work in a different environment. Like Jackie had said, we were forced into this change unwanted, but look at what it has taught us and how we are reimagining how we work. I think that was a necessary step. I think we really needed it, and I think that will serve us well going forward.
All right, and final comments.
Thank you, Jen. I'd like to echo the comments of my colleagues in the fact that very appreciative of given this opportunity to kind of walk through. Second, I'd like to echo Jackie and Laurel's in particular comments about our workforce. I really see the problem set as we are currently faced with as one of partnerships and resiliency. And we can't do anything without the top tier talent that's spread across our agencies, academia, and industry. But we won't have that if we don't take care of them. And so that's really the crux of it all. The second piece on the partnership side, obviously well ingrained in the IC partnerships. We continue to build out on academic and industry. Currently, NSA has 11 Colorado schools as centers for academic excellence. They run everywhere from Colorado Technical University to the Air Force Academy. And there's over 300 nationwide. But we don't stop there. We don't start there even. We start with kindergarten through 12th grade. We've participated as part of the Mountain West Cyber Consortium. And we've been a part of the Patriot, Cyber Patriot camps. So quite literally what I'm trying to describe is we want the whole level of partnership associated, and we're looking forward to growing that. Thank you.
Great, so that really concludes our panel for today. We'd like to thank Raytheon and INSA for allowing us to talk about issues related to the pandemic, the intelligence community, and public-private partnerships across the academic and private industry. And we will hand it back over to Suzanne.
Great. Thank you, Jen and Laurel, Catherine, Darren, Jackie, and David for joining us today. It was a thoughtful conversation. It's clear that everyone on today's panel really cares about the workforce, and it proves that we are in very good hands. I wanted to point out also, and I fail to mention this sometimes, that there are multiple INSA team members who are behind the scenes that you won't ever see in these virtual programs, who've worked diligently to pull off the programming. And it's maybe not what they initially signed up for, but they've all pivoted, like I know so many folks who are tuning in today have, to do their job. So just want to give a shout out to those team members, and also to all of you all for watching online. Thank you for taking the time to share your afternoon or evening with us. And of course, thank you to Boeing, GDIT, Guidehouse, Illuminate Mission Solutions, Leidos, Mantech, Maxar, Raytheon Intelligence and Space, and SAIC. When we went virtual, all these sponsors stuck with us, and it's proved to be a good investment on their part, bringing together our keynote and our panel. When the webinar ends, there'll be a short survey that pops up. Please answer it. It's valuable feedback, particularly feedback on future speakers or topics that you would like to see us address. We really do focus on your survey answers. And finally, we hope you'll join us at one of our upcoming events. As you can see, we do have an incredible lineup for our virtual speaker series, and also our Achievement Awards. Nominations are still open for the Achievement Awards, and you can see a lineup of the different categories of speakers, of nominees that we're looking for. It really is an uplifting event. This does conclude today's program. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy and has a wonderful evening and afternoon, and I hope to see you all soon. Thanks so much.